Hello, I'm Robert Hess. Are you confused about cocktails? Well, I want to demystify them for you so that you'll enjoy them that much better. Now, here we are at the Black Feather. This is the bar in my home, or as I like to think about, my mixology laboratory. And joining me we have Nadja, her husband Matt, and Erica. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Now, the first thing I want to take and make sure I do is give you each a glass of water, because water is extremely important when you're out drinking, because it helps hydrate the body, because drinking dehydrates the body. When you're in a really good bar, you'll always notice that they'll serve you a glass of water right at the stop. Start just like this, because it's so important. A bar that doesn't serve you water, that's because they just can't be bothered with the time, and they're not the kind of bars you want to go to.
Okay, good to know.
Now, the cocktail we're going to serve today starts with champagne. Now, this is actually sparkling wine because it's not from the Champagne region of France, it's from California, but it is a wonderful wine made by a French producer.
I didn't realize that champagne could be a cocktail.
It isn't a cocktail until we make it a cocktail, and that's what we're going to do, is we're going to turn champagne into a cocktail. So, a champagne cocktail, in order to turn it into a champagne cocktail, it's got to be more than just the product, in this case champagne. We're actually going to take and turn this into a champagne cocktail by adding more stuff to it that adds more complexity of flavor, as well as making it on the fancy side.
So how do you enhance the champagne?
Well, we do it with a cube of sugar and some bitters. So I'm going to take some Angostura bitters. I'm just going to hold the sugar cube.
What are bitters?
So bitters are this particular bitters is a proprietary ingredient, which means it's secret. You don't know what all the things are in it. But essentially, it's alcohol with a whole bunch of spices, very intense. Think of, Tabasco sauce. Think of, anything that's really intense like that. You don't want to have a lot of it. You just want to have a little bit of it. I think of bitters in a cocktail as like salt in a soup. You don't want it to taste like salt, but if you left the salt out, it wouldn't taste as good. Now,
Are there different kinds of bitters?
oh, quite a few. So this is Angostura bitters. There's Peychaud's bitters. There's orange bitters. There's various other bitters. A lot of bartenders usually actually make their own bitters. Nowadays, Angostura is probably the bitter one you see quite a bit, just because people are used to it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so all the oils you're smelling now are ones that are going into the drink and are going to make it taste so much better. So you're going to take a twist.
Could you do this with a lemon, or an orange peel as well?
You could. Obviously, oranges taste different than lemons, and a lot of the flavor, the same flavor you think of as being lemon flavor, is in the peel itself. Same thing with an orange. A lot of flavors come through there. So sometimes it's actually better to use the peel for the flavor rather than the fruit.
So do people usually use the classic bitters in this drink, or can you experiment with other types of bitters?
Oh, you could easily experiment with other kinds of bitters. I mean, Angostura bitters, not being the only sort of bitters around, is only one that you can possibly use. There's several others, like I said, Peychaud's and orange bitters, and mint bitters, and peach bitters. There you go.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's delicious.
Delicious.
Wow, that's great. So how old is the champagne cocktail?
Well, the champagne cocktail actually is quite old. As a matter of fact, I have here a copy of a book. So this is the very first bartender's book ever written. It was published back in 1862. Actually, this is a second edition of that. My first edition is actually on display in a museum right now. But this book is the exact same printing as the first edition. And it's actually been recently reprinted. And so this is a modern reproduction of it. So rather than spending several $100s like this on eBay or something like that, you can go to a bookstore and purchase this one. Matt, why don't you take and open that up? I've got the place marked there where he talks about cocktails. Right. Like I said, this is the first bartender's book. It had 200 different mixed drinks in it. Wow. And it had 10 cocktails.
Oh, wow.
Why don't you take and read off the names of the cocktails we have listed there?
Okay. We have the bottle cocktail, the brandy cocktail, the fancy brandy cocktail, the whiskey cocktail, and the one we just had, the champagne cocktail.
Okay, so when we stop on the champagne cocktail, I want to have you read off how they make the champagne cocktail there.
Okay, a half a teaspoon of sugar, 1 or 2 dashes of bitters, a piece of lemon peel, and then you fill the tumbler 1/3 full of broken ice, and fill the balance with wine. Shake well and serve.
So essentially, almost the exact same drink we have here, other than I didn't use ice and I didn't shake it, but the exact same ingredients: the lemon peel, the sugar, the bitters, and the champagne. And so that cocktail hasn't changed at all from 1862 until modern days.
Wow.
Now, the other cocktails we saw listed there, the gin cocktail, the brandy cocktail, the whiskey cocktail, and the fancy variations of it, those cocktails, simple enough, but we don't hear about them anymore just because people nowadays are having things like cosmopolitans and lemon drops and Manhattans and martinis and stuff like that. So the names no longer reflect just the product. Now, the cocktail itself can include any spirit, but it's always going to have kind of the same sort of general appeal going on to it. So the cocktail first came in print in 1803. And in 1800, and it was just basically mentioned. Just, I got up in the morning and had a cocktail. So we know the name must have existed much before that. In 1806, we see it defined. A newspaper printed it, the word cocktail, and one of the readers wrote in and says, "Okay, so I know what's going on in the paper here, but what the heck is the thing you're calling a cocktail?" And the editor said, "Okay, I'll tell you what a cocktail is." And he rambled on and talked about politics for a while, but it all eventually came back down to talking about the cocktails being spirits of any kind, sugar, water, bitters. So let's take a look at the champagne cocktail again. So spirits of any kind. Now we used champagne or sparkling wine instead of a spirit. And so a sparkling wine is going to be a undistilled spirit. So we haven't concentrated the alcohol in it yet. And so you can kind of think, okay, we've already got a kind of watered down version of spirit. So we got the spirit, we got the water, we got the sugar, we got the bitters. So by definition, there's a cocktail. Now the gin cocktail and the brandy cocktail and the whiskey cocktail, same thing. It'd be a spirit, sugar, enough water to help dissolve the sugar so it's not all granulated, and then bitters. And that's basically it. And a lot of the cocktails in that day were layered in that fashion. So
Yes.
I recommend, enjoy.
Thank you. Cheers.